So once again, good evening, brothers and sisters from all Latin America. Soon we will begin our Vision 2027 workshop centered on our new continental leader, Reverend David Dong Wu Kim. My name is Jin Hua, and I will be your translator from the Latin languages for English this evening. Thank you very much for coming, and hope that you enjoy and learn a lot tonight. Thank you very much. Stay tuned. Soon we will begin. Good evening, brothers and sisters from all South America. Soon we will begin our 2027 workshop centered on our new continental leader, Reverend David Dongwoo Kim. Hope that all of you may have a great night and learn a lot in order to help in the advancement of the Providence in your regions and in your missions. Thank you very much. My name is Jinhua, and I'll be your translator from the Latin languages to English this evening. Thank you very much, and let's stay strong together. Thank you very much. Stay tuned. Soon we will begin. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. How are you? Are are all of you fine? So today we will have the Vision 2027 workshop. Today, December 11th. Let's do the opening of this 7-day workshop when receive as our lecturer our continental leader, Reverend David Dong Kim. First of all, let's do um, um about to our true parents. So now I would like to begin with a prayer. Heavenly parents, beloved true parents of heaven, earth, and humankind, we thank for this opportunity that once again you are giving a great love and blessings to our nations and continents, for all our blessed families and Chombo families, and for our providence, guiding it to establish a great foundation and victory until 2027, which was bestowed to us by our true mother. Now we would like to receive your words through our continental, continental leader, Reverend Kim, and may we perceive the importance of, of, of our unity with these words, with this ideal, and we pray that you allow us to, fu- to fulfill this workshop and for us to attain complete unity with, with our true parents' hearts, and then be able to share understanding and deepen our understanding of our true mother's heart, who has been shedding infinite tears and sweat and blood for the victory of the providence, and and that everything that will be said here will be very important for the victory of the heavenly trouble Messiah providence, and all of this will be truly important for them, for the fulfillment, for the successful establishment of the 2027 vision, beginning a new era in the providence. We pray that you stay with all our brothers and sisters and blessed families from from Latin America, and that by uniting with these words, we'll be able to offer a great victory for you. Thank you very much. That's what I pray. So once again, thank you very much for your presence and your participation. I, I would like to briefly explain about this workshop, as this is the first day. So the official name of this workshop is, is the Vision 2027 workshop, and the lecturer from the first until the last day will be Reverend David Dong Kim, who is the Heavenly South America Continental Director and also the Director of the Subregion 1 of Heavenly South America. So originally, the idea for this workshop was originally for the Subregion 1, Brazil. However, we we opened the participation for all the other sub-regions, increasing the participation and also offering the translation for the other languages. So every day of this workshop there will be a lecture starting from 8 p.m. Brazil time, and and the and the contents that will be conveyed to start from today is the providential significance of the life of our true parents, and then and then the, so, and then for the Honoke as a lifestyle of Changu. And the fifth day is about champion providence and mobilization of the spirit world. In the sixth day will be Chombo families and the Heavenly Trouble Messiah, and in the 27th and in the seventh day there will be the 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 national restoration and Vision 2027. So please, those who are receiving translation well, please raise your hands. Spanish is okay. Okay. So explaining a little bit more before we receive our uh, Reverend Kim, the goal for this 70 workshop is for us to understand the providence and also understand our providential position in in this 7 year course until 2027 with this new direction from Tremodder and also new goals and also new objectives. And only after we clearly understand the content of the 7 day workshop, we'll be able to discover and understand our role and importance in the providence and how can we help in the current providence. So this event, this workshop is really important, and 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 it's a content that all the members and the families need to understand in order to take part in the current providence. So let's unite completely with her, and and let's unite completely with the heart of our central figure and her mother, and let's understand completely and deeply the ways to achieve and fulfill the current providence. And also, let's understand more deeply about the goals and the responsibility that we need to fulfill beyond before our heavenly parents and true parents. So, mhm. so the content will be the contents will be the directions and orientations from True Mother from the Victoria's Foundation of 2020 until the fulfillment of the 2027 vision. So this is very important that we understand. And then after we receive the words of Reverend Kim, we'll have a Q&A question. But since we have a since we have a limitation, there will not be that many questions. But but despite of that, we'll have this opportunity of a Q&A, and this will repeat every day. And by and if by chance do you know someone that is not participating yet, so please share with them and tell them to join. Now we are beginning a war, and if a soldier do not understand and do not know the directions from the general, then he cannot act. That's why it is very important for us to understand as clear as possible the directions and the content that will be given through this workshop, and also understand very clearly the directions from our central figure and the directions of our true mother about the current providence and our role and mission in this. So this is my part for the introduction of this 7 day workshop, and let's now receive the words of our continental director, Reverend David Dongwoo Kim. Let's receive him with a big hand.
Good evening, brothers and sisters in South America. It's been a long time to see all of you. I'm so glad to see you and share God's word all of the South America. I really appreciate all of your heart toward God and true parents, and then your effort to really restore the nation and fulfill your responsibility as a heavenly tribal Messiah. From today, for 7 days, I would like to keep this online seminar to share the God's providence and what we need to do at this point. We have been working and sacrificing ourselves to fulfill God's providence long time. Sometimes we really understood what we have to do for God's providence. But sometimes, even though we didn't know and didn't understand clearly, we have to work for God's providence. Today and tomorrow, for today's first, I would like to share God's providence centering on true parents. Who are true parents, especially who was true father, and what true father had done on this earth, centering on God's providence. And also, we had passed the foundation day, which was really turning point of God's providence. So that's why God's providence has been divided and then upgraded as two, before the foundation day and after foundation day. So that's why I really want to share to put into our intention and then our understanding toward true parents' life course on this earth as a two-part, before the foundation day and after foundation day. So today, I want to share with you what does it mean true father's providential course on this earth, basically. So that's why I would like to put today's lecture's subject as the life of true parents and completion of Providence of Restoration. That means I want to share an overview of a true parents' life course on this earth. So in that sense, I propose that we need to have a certain frames to look into the true parents' work and how we can get in there, and then how we can digest that one. So that's why I would like to suggest that basic two viewpoint. One is viewpoint of restoration through indemnity, because God has sent to the second Adam, which was the Son of God, Jesus Christ, and the second Advent, who is the true Father. Because Father sent the second Adam and third Adam in order to restore what Adam and Eve had lost in the Garden of Eden due to the fall. So that's why Jesus Christ and true Father must work on the God's providence to restore what Adam and Eve had lost. In these things we called restoration through indemnity in the principle. So that's why we can research the true Father's life course based on the viewpoint of the restoration through indemnity. In this sense, we can divide these indemnities as two aspects. One is the providence of restoration, centering on true Father's way, work as a second Advent. And the other one is providence of restoration through the blessing. Blessing histories. In other words, the true Father had used the blessings to indemnify for the restoration, to restore what Adam and God had lost since human beings fall. So that's why we will look into the true Father's course as one of true Father's course itself. And second is a blessing history. That's the viewpoint of the restoration indemnity. And on the other side, we can put in the viewpoint of the completion of creation, which means God had a plan to create ideal world and complete this world. And then he created Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. But Because of the fall, God should keep still the ideal of creation. So that's why God had been working to restore the situation and the circumstances. And finally, after 4,000 years of the human fall, God was able to send Jesus Christ. But Jesus Christ couldn't fulfill the final idea. That's why, based on the principle of creation, God can send the second advent after 2,000 course of restoration. So that's why, that means year 6,000, which means year 2000, God's creation providence must have a certain harvest. And in this sense, since the God's creation of humanity, 4,000 years, he sent Jesus Christ. And finally, at the third step, God has sent to the second advent, true Father. That's why true Father must build certain foundation to fulfill God's final idea. That's supposed to be year 2000. So we have this kind of viewpoint. So from now on, I would like to share these basic two viewpoints with two aspects, totally three kind of frameworks. Centering on these three kind of frames, we can look back what true Father had achieved and also what was the true Father's course. So let's go together. First, viewpoint of the restoration through indemnity. Number one, the providence of restoration centering on second advent, which means the true Father had led the whole history of the restoration through indemnity throughout his whole life. So, Father said, the Lord of second advent comes to complete the foundation of God's providence of restoration that Jesus left. And what is God's providence of restoration? So, bottom line, we can see here, number one is true Father as a second advent and as the second only begotten Son. First, he must find his bride. Who is second advent bride? That's the only begotten daughter, which means second advent throughout the way of indemnities. Number one purpose for God's real providence is to find only begotten daughter. And then second, he should get blessing from God and then become the true parents of humanity. This is the second achievement. And then finally, as true parents, true Father must build up the complete foundation to save all humanity. Like this, true Father's course has been really aimed at this kind of step-by-step providence and then had achieved one by one. So, now why true Father should work this way? Because of the fall. So Adam's achievement had been remain to the course of indemnity. Originally in the Garden of Eden here, so God created Adam and Eve, and God gave the commandments. What is God's commandment? God's commandment is to become one with the words. So that's why Adam, throughout his life of growth stage, he's supposed to become one with God's word. and then he should become completion of God's word. And then Adam didn't fail and become one with God's word. He should be able to become one with God in God's heart. In other words, he was be able to become Son of God. That was his purpose. And then once he become Son of God, and then he is supposed to get married with Eve as daughter of God. So Adam and Eve become couple, and then has formed a family, and then children will come out. And then this family will be the ideal family of God. And this family spread out to the world and then formed tribe and people, nation, and finally, Adam's descendants, Eve's descendants must spread out and dominate the whole earth. This is God's the final of his idea. So that's why once Adam becomes Son of God, and then Adam should become the true parents of humanity. And then finally, not only as parents, but also as a king of humanity. He should be able to lead and then dominate all humanity and then all things too. This is the Adam's way, centering on God's creation. But due to the fall, Adam had lost all these kind of ideal positions. So that's why God sent to the Jesus Christ and then second advent to restore all these steps, step by step, through the indemnity. So that's why True Father's course is actually, we can say that the restoration of Adam. In other words, through the indemnity course, Father should restore the one by one of Adam's positions, which he had lost in the Garden of Eden. So that's why God sent to True Father, and he was born 1920. So that's from 1920 to the starting of a public mission on 1945. For 25 years, True Father's life was really the course to prepare his public mission as a Son of God. And then, since he started his public mission, he's supposed to be the stand on the position of God's Son of God. That's why he's supposed to go to the very short way of restoring Adam's position, such as elder son and parents and king. But the central figure of Korean Christianity, as John the Baptist, failed to fulfill his responsibility and the Korean Christianity's responsibility. They failed. That's why True Father was not able to keep his providential work as a Son of God. Instead, he went down to his position, to the servant of servant in front of Satan. And then he started to go through to restore one by one throughout the indemnities. So that's why, since public mission started, True Father's cause had been totally the way of indemnities, from the individual level to the cosmic level. So Father had been fighting with Satan, and then restored one by one. So that's why Father's way of restoration is not just a simple way. Father explained 8 steps, 8 stages of the restoration that we know. Just 8 stages of what? Individual level, family level, individual, family, tribe, people levels, all 8 stages horizontally. Not only these 8 horizontal restorational course, but also here 8 vertical restoration, centering on in front of Satan, so servant of servant position and servant position and son's position with 3 different stages, and then parents position, finally God's position. So vertically 8 stages and horizontally 8 stages, 8 and 64 stages. But actually, there's more than 64 stages, the restorational stages True Father had been passed through and deal with one by one. And then finally, Father was able to fulfill all vertical and the horizontal indemnity conditions. And after that situation, True Father finished actually the restoration through indemnity in front of Satan. And then finally, Father was able to start to restore Garden of Eden, which he had lost due to the Satan. So this is what True Father as a second advent had worked. In this sense, now we can see what I told you briefly as the tables, and then we can check one by one. Here, Adam and Eve supposed to complete, and then their work to become one with God's word, and then become one with God's heart. In other words, they have to become perfect man and woman. And then, as a completed individual in front of God, they get God's blessing, which means they become true parents. And then, as ancestors of humanity and the true parents, finally, they should become the king and the queen of humanity. That was Adam and Eve's way, road. So that's why God sent Jesus. But Jesus was not able to become true parents and a king, because even he was not able to get the blessing. In other words, he could not meet the only begotten daughter and became true parents. That's why second advent, True Father should work through the indemnity, and then first he should become Son of God. In other words, he should stand on the position of Son of God in front of Satan, and then as a Son of God, he should find out only begotten daughter, and then he should form the blessing, and then should become true parents of humanity at that time, right? Over here. In other words, he started his public mission 1945 as a Son of God, and then through this way of completion stages, he should restore. In other words, he should take back from the Satan elder sonship, parentship, and kingship. In other words, he should be the elder son, only begotten daughter, only begotten son first. Because on this fallen world, Satan is taking the position of God's son's position. So even though Father becomes Son of God, still the elder son's position is on the Satan's side. So that's why True Father should restore the elder son centering on God. So that's why elder son and should become parents, and king should take back the king's position during the 7-year course. And the true father said, if Korean Christianity and the central figure didn't fail, father's supposed to fulfill to restore all these 3 ships within 7 years from 1945. And then 1952, true father was able to stand on the true parents' position and start to build Garden of Eden on this earth. And if history went this way, which father predicted, and then there was not supposed to be the Korean War. Instead, father fulfilled his responsibility and then start God's ideal world centering on Korea 70 years ago. But Korean Christianity and the central figure as John the Baptist were not able to fulfill their responsibility. That's why failure of their responsibility, father was not able to keep the position of sons of God. That's why he should went down to the position of servant and then start to fight with Satan to restore one by one through the indemnity, like Jesus Christ. So that's why Jesus Christ couldn't go this way even. So like Jesus, true father went back and down to their position of servant. So that's why from that moment, father's public mission was not able to become God's successful way. Instead, father should go through wilderness course to indemnify his position for 40 years from 1945 to 1985. During this time, Satan really challenged the true father and really tried to get rid of and kill the second advent. But true father had survived, and then he started his indemnity course from the servant of servant and worked through the way and then restored the servant position and adopted position. And finally, 1985, August 16th, that day was the day father released from the Danbury prison. And father proclaimed that day as one victory day. In other words, even though Satan's trial, true father had all won and overcame, and finally, father went back his position as a son of God 40 years ago. So that's why from that moment, father should go through the restoration of 3 ships: elder sonship, parentship, kingship. 40 years before, father was able to pass this through within 7 years, as the father mentioned. But this time, father was not able to go through the first course. This is the second course. That's why this 21-year course became the 7-year course became 21-year course. Each steps become 7 years course. So that's why eldership, restoration of eldership goes to the 7 years, and the restoration of parentship 7 years, restoration of kingship 7 years, totally 21 years course. So that's why from 1985 to 2006, finally, father was able to restore these 3 ships. So that's why based on this restoration stewardship, Father was able to really become the King of Kings in humanity. That's why, centering on that victory, Father was able to build 천정궁, where God can come down on this earth for the first time of a human being. That's the meaning of the ceremony of opening and coronation ceremony of God in 천정궁. So that's why God's providence centering on true Father was really, really precious and delicate to fight with Satan, and then without restoring one by one, horizontally and vertically, Father was not able to proclaim victory because Satan was always ready to accuse what your Father had done. So that's why the completion of restoration is real and the total victory of true Father in front of Satan. Satan was not able to put any, even single one accusation to Father. So, in that sense, let's present it on this table. Let's look into the details, what happened to restore each step, and what kind of Father's achievement really were able to make this victory. If we go to the details and then check the one by one, and then our members will really understand, because of this victory, Father was able to develop the God's providence next level and next level. So, based on that table, first, we can see the 40 years of wilderness course from 1945 to 1985. First time, Father studied a 3 years public course. That was 1945 to 1948. The key providence of this 3 years course was that Korean Christianity, centering on Korean Christian central figure like John the Baptist, should stand before true Father and then witness true Father and become one with the true Father. If John the Baptist figure become one with the true Father, and then Korean Christianity completely become one with the true Father. And then at that time, Korean Christianity has been connected with the American Christianity, mostly Northern Presbyterians churches. So that's why if this kind of a structure has been built up, and then Korean, centering on Korean Christianity, true Father was able to stand on the position of Korean Christianity, and under Korean Christianity, there was Korean government. Korean government has been run by President Lee Seung-man, who was the really sincere Christian, and who had a really strong connection with America, USA. So that's why Korean Christianity and Korea and America. So that's why if Father was able to build this 3 years public course successfully, and then immediately Father's idea and Father's work as a second advent to the spread out to the America. And once Korea and Father become one with America, at that time, just the Second World War finished, and America was the most powerful and the number one country all over the world. That's why America was able to realize Father's teaching, God's idea, through the UN providence at that time within 4 years. That was God's prepared automatic providence. Once Korean Christian John the Baptist figure become one with the Father and then follow Father. And then automatic God's providence. But it did not happen. That's why Father went to the indemnity course of 40 years. So that's why Father went down from the Son of God's position to the servant of servant position. That's why he went to the God sent the Father to the North Korea, where Satan is a dominating country. So that's why when Father went in the North Korea, and then he started to spread out and teach the people with God's word. But actually North Korea was the servant country. So that's why Father went to the position of servant. That's why Satan sent Father to the servant of servant position, which means communist countries prisoner. So North Korea government sent Father to the Hungnam concentration camp, which was at that time is North Korea's prison. So in that sense, Father's course, Father's work started from the servant of servant for 40 years. During that time, Father established the Unification Church. That's why Unification Church is not the ideal church or organization to complete God's idea. Unification Church, HSA UWC, is the organization or church which can restore Christian church. So that's why in front of Second Advent, Christianity had responsibility. But due to the failure of a central figure in Korean Christianity, the worldwide Christianity went to the Satan's dominion. Father had lost Christianity. That's why instead of Christianity, in front of Father, certain religion or Christianity should stand and work with your Father. That's why Father by himself created this alternative Christianity. That is HSA UWC Unification Church. That's why from 45, Unification Church history had begun. And during that time, True Father had a holy blessing. In other words, during this wilderness course time, True Father really tried to find out the begotten daughter. And then finally he found out the begotten daughter and start his life from the individual begotten son to the true parents. And finally, Satan had been working to destroying true Father from the North Korea to the America. In other words, for 40 years, Satan always trying to kill the Second Advent and prohibit and destroy true Father. So that's why during this time, true Father always tried to fight and then run away and hide. This kind of fighting time has been, went on. And finally, Satan used the American government, put the true Father in jail. So, 1984, America sent the true Father to the Denver. But finally, true Father became the Holy Son in the prison. And he won all the situation, and he overcame Satan's invasion and Satan's trials, whatever. and then he was able to restore his position as Son of God on 1985, August 16th. So that's why Father proclaimed that day the release from the Danbury prison as the day of one victory. So from that point, he was able to work as second advent, Son of God. But still the power and the dominion power was not on the hand of Son of God, but Satan. In other words, Satan took the elder son's position spiritually and physically on this earth more than real Son of God, true Father. So that's why after taking back the position of God's Son throughout the 40 years indemnity course and the wilderness course, Father was able to start to fight again to restore his elder sonship. In other words, even though in front of God, Father was the Son of God and second Advent, but satanic world, outside the world, no one really accepted and received the Father as the second Advent. No one believed and no one agreed that Reverend Moon is the Messiah. Why? Satan is taking elder sonship. That's why Father had been working and fighting and then building indemnity conditions to really restore and finally become the only God on this God's Son on this earth. So that's why Father had been working for 7 years, and on the way, 1985, as I already explained, Father achieved the restore through indemnity vertically 8 stages and horizontally 8 stages. That's why Father proclaimed 1989, August 29th, the settlement of 8 stages. Father celebrated and proclaimed. This means Father became not only Son of God, but also Father became the God himself. In other words, with his personal total victory, horizontally, vertically, he was able to become God's embodiment. So that's why on this earth, God can come to true Father anytime, but not everywhere, but only in true Father. So that's why with this victorious foundation, Father proclaimed heavenly parentism, which means for the first time of humankind, the God's love and God's ideal can spread out, can come down and settle down on this earth through the true Father. So that's why on the settlement of the 8th stage, Father proclaimed heavenly parentism start on this earth with the human history. And based on that situation, as a God's manifestation, Father had met Gorbachev, the head of Soviet Union. So what does it mean to meet Gorbachev? Gorbachev is the president of the Soviet Union, means that he really had elder sonship of this world, fallen world, instead of Satan. That's why once meet the Gorbachev, and then with God's love and true parents' love, and finally Gorbachev accepted your Father, and then had a submission, automatic submission before Father. So Father asked him, to choose 5,000 young people to send to America. And the Father said, I will educate them. for the future of Soviet Union. And the father emphasized that you have to follow God's way. The communism is not the idea. Why? Communism denies God, who is really alive and living together with us. So based on that one, that kind of situation, Father really embraced Gorbachev. This means Father really restored Elderson's position on this earth. So that's why, based on that victory, Father proclaimed 7.1 joy, which means God's eternal blessing comes, which means now on this earth, God's elder son is standing. Satan is no more taking God's son's position, elder son's position. So that's why God's eternal blessing from now on can come down and go to the humanity throughout real God's elder son, true Father. So that's why 7.1절 is so important. So after this proclamation, Father started to send out the tribal Messiah. Why? True Father became elder son now, right? And then true Father is the kind of a pipeline of God's eternal blessing goes through the all humanity. That's why Father had chosen blessed families as a tribal Messiah and then send them out so that blessed family become Messiah, elder son, like a true Father. And then Father, 1991, met Kim Il-sung. Kim Il-sung is like a parents of North Korea. So that's why once Kim Il-sung met, true Father really embraced him and then restored even Father's position. And then based on that one, 1982, April 10th, true Father launched Women's Federation for World Peace, WWP. So that day, there was the blessing too. But that day, there was a 7 years course of restoring elder sonship centering on true Father had successfully achieved. So that's why Father initiated WFWP and then Father proclaimed, now the center of the Women's Federation is True Mother. That means Father restore elder son nation, and the next step is to restore parentship. In order for Father should become parents, he is standing on the Father's position, but parents are going to be the father and mother. So that's why from that moment, true mother should work the way of to restoring the parents' position for 7 years. In other words, true mother stood on the object position of true father in front of Satan and then begin true mother's portion of responsibility to achieve 7 years course to restore parentship. So that's why next 7 years from 1992 to 1999 was the era of true mother's responsibility. That's why instead of true father stand on the people and then speak, true father always put the true mother. And then there are so many different kind of and different times of true mothers speaking to her. Right? We remember. So that's from that moment, the true mother's world speaking tour had begun. And then once true mother is going to the world, and then with God's word, true mother went to the way of indemnity, one side. The other side, the Father had been build up the providence to prepare to the next steps of the world. So that's why Father already started from the family pledge, 1994, which was 40 years late, 40 years after of Unification Church, HSA, UWC, Providence. And also, based on that situation, in other words, after restoration of parentship, Father put the blessed families to become national messiahs, to restore nations. So-called national messiahs, Providence had begun. And then, also 1996, Father had been jumped. Individual level, HSAWC, focusing on individual salvation. But actually, true parents should achieve family physical salvation. That's why from 1996, in order to deal with the physical salvation centered on family, is a HSA UWC has been transcended to the Family Federation for World and Unity, FFWPU. And then the other side, Father also proclaimed God's providence, the realm of God's Sabbath on 1997 as a 7-8절. What is 7-8절? 7-8절 is God's Sabbath. God's Sabbath is a kind of God's blessing comes down on this earth. And to hold God's blessing on this earth will begin centering on the victory of true parents, not individual, but as couple and the parents of humanity. So after build up this kind of situation, True Father finally launched Hundoke Providence. Hundoke Providence is going to be the tradition for the ideal world. In other words, True Father already, since True Father focusing on restoration of parentship as the significant or substantial parents of all humanity, Father is really preparing that ideal world. How humanity can keep the God's word and the God's love in their family, and then really keep that blessing to the descendant in human history. And then this counting finally, for 7 years, True Mother's course, True Mother had fulfilled her portion of responsibility. And then finally, 1999, June 14th, True Father celebrated True Parents' cosmic victory. This proclamation made True Mother stood on the same position with the True Father in front of Satan. And the True Mother became one as a substantial parents of humanity in front of Satan. So that means it finished to restore parents. And finally, True Father had led to restore kingship for the next 7 years course from 1999 to 2006. During this time, Father had been organized so many different kind of coronation ceremony. Do you remember? We didn't know which one is which one, but over and over and over again, different level of many kinds of coronation ceremony centering on Father's direction we have done, right? For in the nation, or for the true parents, and for the nation, and for the tribal, and for God, and for Jesus Christ, so many different levels. So that means due to the fall, Adam had lost the king's position. In order to restore that king's position horizontally and vertically, Father had been established so many different kind of coronation ceremony. One side, on the other side, Father had been developed God's providence with different steps. In other words, God had been upgraded God's providence centering on this victorious foundation for the next world. So that's why, first of all, 1999, Father made a prayer. Before that, we prayed on behalf of true parents. But from this time, we were able to pray with our own name, which means Father bequeathed all the victory and all the foundation as the substantial parents of humanity to the blessed family. In other words, blessed family also, once we are able to fulfill our responsibility, we can become true parents. And as a true parents, we are able to pray with our own name. This is amazing victory. This is really first time to humankind histories. It's an amazing blessing. So that's why whenever true Father build up the victory, and then always Father had proclaimed and then offered this victory to the God. And then next, true Father build up the certain rally or whatever things, and then true Fathers immediately bequeath to this victory and the victorious foundation to all blessed family. And in 2000, Father called all the blessed family wife in Changpyeong, and then Father asked to participate in the workshop. And after workshop, Father asked the blessed family with the families to the restoration blessing for the victory of 3 stages from 2000 September. Still, Changpyeong Workshop Center is running this workshop and this restoration blessing. So this later on I will explain this one. But due to this restoration blessing, all blessed family, after participating in this restoration blessing, we became blessed central family. This is really upgraded of our identity as a blessed family, from the blessed family to blessed central family. I will share the more detail and the deep meaning later on, centering on God's providence. And also 2001, True Father had God's coronation ceremony, which means throughout the many different kind of coronation ceremony, that day was the first day that God can come down on this earth, not just as a creator, not just as parents, but just as king of humanity in front of Satan. This is also amazing victory of God's providence. And then centering on this God's coronation ceremony, God was able to come to the physical world as a king. So that's how God's providence on this earth really speeded up from that moment. So, based on that one, True Father studied real peace movement worldwide by organizing and then launching the Providence of the Ambassadors for Peace from 2001. And also True Parents coronation ceremony and the Jesus Christ coronation ceremony. Why? Because God as a king can come down on this earth. So that's why centering on king of humanity, different kings like Jesus Christ, True Parents became king and queen and had this many different kind of coronation ceremony had followed the situation. And finally, based on that victorious foundation, Father launched UPF, universal peace, federation. And then our movement centering on true Father had focusing on and went through the peace movement centering on UN. And then finally, Father organized the coronation ceremony for the entering 천정궁, where God and true parents become one and stay with there. So that's why with this coronation ceremony for entering 천정궁 Providence, actually true Father was able to complete the providence of restoration through indemnity. No more indemnity. True Father needed. Still, we, as the best family, might need to put the indemnity condition. But at least for true Father, there was no more indemnity course. That's why indemnity finished it. That's why everything indemnified from that moment, true Father was able to recreate lost Garden of Eden on the earth. So that's why from 2006, for 7 years until 2013, the foundation day, this 7 years course is really time for true Father recreate Garden of Eden on this earth. So that's why during this time, Father had a lot of providence, mostly centering on Las Vegas, and also finally centering on Yeosu in Korea, as we know. So in Las Vegas and also in Yeosu, what was the Father's main point of the providence? It's really to build, recreate Garden of Eden on this earth. So that's why, in order for us to live in the fallen world, Amen, it's okay to call and become one with the heavenly God. But if we moved from fallen world to the ideal world, which is the Garden of Eden, our celebration and our oneness with God supposed to be different. That's why Father changed from Amen to Aju. This is really significant, God's providence and true parents' providence. And then, throughout the Las Vegas providence, true Father proclaimed the completion of the final oneness of true parents. In other words, true Father and true Mother, as the Adam and Eve, become completely one in front of God. So that's why. That means in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve was not able to become one, right? Why? Because of Satan's seduction. Because Satan tried to seduce Eve. That's why in order for father and mother as Adam and Eve to become completely one, true father and true mother must seduce Satan, right? And must cheat Satan. That kind of things happen in the Las Vegas, which is the city of sin, Satan's city. So finally, true mother and true father really went over the Satan and finally become completely one. So that's why 2010, May 15, Father proclaimed the final complete oneness, Adam and Eve and God. In other words, God, Adam, and Eve completely become one. So that's a 일심, 일체, 일념, 일화 among the God, Adam, and Eve. So from that moment, true parents named true parents as true parents of heaven, earth, and humanity. Because God, true Father, true Mother become completely one. This is an amazing, great victory of providence. And this means true parents completely restored Garden of Eden. Look, God, what happened with the Garden of Eden? Adam and Eve were there, and there was God, and there was archangels, right? So that's why this proclamation means Satan, God, Adam and Eve really staying together, and these circumstances become Garden of Eden. So that's why, based on this complete victory as one is, true parents were able to start the time of Garden of Eden. What does it mean, time of Garden of Eden? Garden of Eden originally was the what? The kingdom of heaven. In other words, centering on the foundation day. True Father had restored everything and then identified everything and then had also built up the Garden of Eden. And centering on this Garden of Eden, true Father and true Mother, as the true parents of heaven, earth, and humanity, really plan to begin the kingdom of heaven on earth from the foundation day. So that's why Father already predicted, okay, 2013, January 13, we will celebrate that launching. That will be the foundation day. And then Father had worked on that. So that means true Father's course shows us that he finished all the restoration. That means with the true Father's victory, we are able to move in the world where Satan's no longer exists. That's what true Father has achieved. And the second viewpoint of restoration is through indemnity, throughout blessing. So Father mentioned from 36 families, 36 blessed families, Father has been working, and that this blessing history can exceed 12 years until now, which means this kind of blessing, major blessing event goes 12 times. And then true parents established the authority of the heaven and earth to deny Satan's accusation conditions. That was actually true Father's plan through the blessing, how to restore the nation and how to get rid of Satan's accusation conditions. So that's why the blessings is very important matters that we can see how Father has been restored world. As you know, I don't want to, detailed explanation because as a blessed family, everybody knows. So we can say from 3 couples to the, look at 1, 2, 3, 4. So 12, number 12 is 3.6 million couples blessing. Actually, fathers planned the 3.6 million couple blessing, but actually what happened on 1997 was to achieve 36 million couples. So 12 years has been greatly successfully achieved. That's why from that moment, the Father proclaimed the globalization of the blessing, which means the blessing goes to the world easily. That kind of time came throughout, the indemnified foundation throughout repeated blessing. And finally, 13 times of the blessing, True Father had 360 million couples blessing. And then this happened with 2 times, 1989, 1988, 1989. And then Father proclaimed that Father achieved the cosmic achievement through the blessing. What does it mean? I heard, Father explain the blessing. How was he able to get the victorious foundation? What is the meaning of the blessing? Key point of the blessing is holy wine ceremony. Without the holy wine ceremony, there is no blessing. So that's why key aspect of blessing is holy wine ceremony. And then we know what does it mean, holy wine. So holy wine is really the God's weapon and God's instrument to remove original sin from Satan. That means with the holy wine ceremony, fallen human being can change blood lineage to God's blood. So this is the power and the meaning of holy wine. That's why holy wine is the things to separate Satan. As long as holy wine goes, Satan gonna be separated. That's why in the beginning of the blessing, all blessed couples had a holy wine ceremony. In their dreams, their ancestor or somebody showed up, and then they begged to these blessed couples, "Can you give me just one drop of holy wine?" Like that, because that spirit knew how much so powerful and how this holy wine can separate Satan. So that's why holy wine is the most significant and powerful weapon from God, which has been made by true parents with their victorious foundation. So 3, this holy wine can establish the realm of God's dominion. So that's why holy wine ceremony spread out. And then the more and more people have holy wine ceremony, God's dominion will spread out. This is the meaning of the blessing and the meaning of the holy wine ceremony. That's why True Father had used this blessing throughout the holy wine ceremony to spread out the realm of God's dominion. So that's why, as the Father said, this number 12 major blessing, finish it, the 13th blessing, which was 360 couples blessing. Finally, God and True Father, true parents were able to win the Satan. You know how Father proclaimed to win the Satan? Father said, okay, 360 million couples. That's a couple. And then how many husband and wife? 720 million, right? So we are doing 360 couples blessing, but before we did already 36 million. And all together, when we had the 360 million couples blessing, at that time, all blessed families and numbers is 400 million, almost 400 million. And the Father calculated. And he okay, I had blessed a total around 400 million couples blessing on behalf of God. And then we have 800 million husband and wife. And then once we expand this number to the family, let's say four members in one family. So that's why altogether already it's called three, not 300, 3.2 billion people belongs to God's dominion. So at that time, 1999, 3.2 billion population worldwide is more than half. At that time, world population was around 5 billion to 5 billion, something like that. But already more than 6 billion people was under the holy wine influence. That's why True Father proclaimed. Now, humanity who had God's blood lineage connected with God, numbers go over the number of Satan's domination. That's why Satan should surrender. And then you know what happened. Finally, 360 million couples blessing was held on 1999, February 7th. And then next month, March 21st, as you know, Satan finally surrendered to True Father. So this is why True Father's blessing history is really aimed Satan and defeat Satan. And finally, through the blessing, Father was able to separate and push Satan out under God's providence. So finally, we have a different viewpoint of the completion of creation. As you see on this table, after human beings fall, 4,000 years later, Jesus Christ came. But God was not able to complete his idea of creation. That's why after 2,000 years, true parents came. And this time is the third time. So that's why God's idea must be fulfilled. Right? This is creation. And this is the completion of creation. And then when is God's 6,000 years of providential year? That's the year 2000. So that's why year 2000, God's 6,000 years of history of restoration should finish it. And then next year, from 2001, God's new era of the world, centering on God's idea of creation, must begin. So that's why 2001, January 13th, Father had God's coronation ceremony on this earth, which means for the 6,000 years, first time God was able to come down on his created physical world. That was 2001. So that's why from 2001, from that year for 12 years, true parents has built up the Garden of Eden, where God can dwell with the ancestor of humankind. So that's why when we see the viewpoint of the completion of creation from 2001 throughout the 12 years course, true parents, centering on God as a king, should build up the Garden of Eden, centering on God. That was the true parents' history. So that's why 1960, true parents got the holy blessing, and then after 40 years course, 2001, God's coronation ceremony. With God's coronation ceremony, the world, right, world has been changed from the era of before heaven to the era of after heaven. So, and also that God's coronation ceremony is a borderline of the realm of the heart of third Adam to the first Adam's era. So this kind of significant God's providence has been centering on true parents. So that's why this kind of the proclamation goes to settle down one by one from the 2001. But first of all, true father and true mother should build up kingdom of heaven on earth. What is the kingdom of heaven on earth? This kingdom of heaven on earth will begin from the Garden of Eden. So that's why the foundation day, 2013, January 13, is the day for the Garden of Eden. Restore the Garden of Eden will begin for the first time in human history. So that's why for 12 years, true parents really work. So that's why this kingdom of heaven based on the God's sovereignty. God's sovereignty forms centering on nation first. So that's why true parents really work to create a form of restoring nation. So for the nation, God's nation, we need three aspects. Number one, people. Number two, land. Number three, sovereignty. So that's why true parents had worked to really restore, recreate God's people, God's land, God's sovereignty. So what is 천일국? The meaning of 천일국. Father clearly mentioned that 천일국 is where two people become one. That means true mother and true father completely become one. This is 천일국. And then two people, what else? Spiritual world and the physical world become one. This is 천일국. So that's why, in order to make a 천일국 people, Father proclaimed of completion of total oneness of true parents. So that's why Las Vegas, with this proclamation, true parents became the people of the 천일국. Even two people is fully enough to begin the kingdom of heaven on earth. So that's why 천일국 people already established. And then, where is 천일국 land? 천일국 land will begin from 천정궁. 천정궁 is a place where only God and 천일국 citizen as a true father and true mother stay in God's land. So that's why 천정궁 is 천일국 land. That's 2006. And finally, sovereignty. And what is the sovereignty for the God's nation? God's sovereignty is a national kind of level need to be established. 2010, Solomon Island Prime Minister and then his group visited 천정궁, where God's land and God's nation. And with that visitation, true father blessed Solomon Island as ally nation of true parents, which means true parents already owns nation, which is 천일국. And 천일국 is level of the nation, national level. So that's why in front of Satan, even though Father studied the kingdom of heaven as a 천일국, there is no accusation at all. Furthermore, next year, true Father visited Nigeria, right? But providentially, Father visited Nigeria, not as just a visitor, but Father mentioned that I am going to visit Nigeria as brotherhood nation. That's why in front of 천일국 with the true parents, there was an allied nation and brethren nation. That's why, based on this victorious foundation, to establish the kingdom of heaven centered on true parents foundation, they was able to start. That's why when we look back the true parents, true fathers, whole life course before foundation was total focusing on restoration, and finally true father was able to fulfill, to finish it, all different kind of indemnity, and finish it, restoration, and rebuild, recreate Garden of Eden. And then in that sense, the foundation day means the opening of Garden of Eden on this earth. So we had been look back and then checking the true parents' life goals as a providential history before the foundation. So tomorrow we will look into the meaning of Foundation Day, and then 7-year course and the further course of God's providence after Foundation Day. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Reverend Kim. Let's give him a big hand.
Agradecemos palavras
So now thank the words of Reverend Kim.
essa palavra preciosa que hoje
So
nós
please,
queria receber, né?
please remember our words. Now we will begin the next session, that is the Q&A session.
Nesse momento,
So in this moment,
receber pergunta.
I would like to receive the question. Hello, can you listen to me? Can you listen to me? Listen to me. Can you listen to me? Hello, can you listen to me now? Can you listen to me now?
Está aí?
Are you there? Listen to me.
Abrir o microfone.
Ok.
So open the microphone.
Pergunta é o seguinte: ela se tornou filha unigênita quando recebeu a bênção com o verdadeiro filho, ou ela já nasceu filha unigênita?
Okay, the question is, true mother became the only begotten daughter when she received the blessing with
Can you listen to me? Can you hear me now?
parents, or she already born as the only begotten daughter?
사모님께서 독생녀로서 원래 그렇게 태어나신지 아니면 나중에 그렇게 되셨는지 그런 질문입니다.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Yeah, thank you for your attention. With this question about true mother in terms of only begotten daughter, this case, I would try to keep the more kind of lecture or communication process in the future in order to deal with the subjects one by one. So from next week, after we finish the 7 days vision seminar, we will begin Tribal Messiah, Heavenly Tribal Messiah School. And we will have class once a week, every Friday. So I can put this issue with the true mother as only begotten daughter in that session. So in order to explain true mother's this point, it takes it need more time and also other connected providential situation. So that's why I think I can share with you more and then deeper through the further lectures.
Ok, Pastor Neide, tudo bem?
Ok, obrigado.
Ok, vamos esperar, né? Tem bastante oportunidade e tempo, né? Daqui para frente.
Sim.
Então, outra pessoa. Pastor Warison, pode...
Hello, can you hear me?
Boa noite. Eu queria saber mais sobre quando o verdadeiro pai encontrou com Gorbachev na Rússia, como ficou o trabalho do Gorbachev a partir dali, porque não se fala muito no Gorbachev depois desse encontro. Se ele continuou seguindo o verdadeiro pai.
하나도 안 들리는데.
고르바초프하고 아버님께서 많이 섭리적으로 일을 하셨다고 많이 들었는데 그 섭리가 끝난 다음에 지금까지 혹시 뭔가 또 진행된 거 있는 것인지 아니면은 그 고르바초프가 아버님 계속 따라가고 있는지 그런 부분이 궁금합니다.
Gorbachev had lost his position, and he went back to the one of natural people. But I think the meeting with Gorbachev is a kind of providential kind of turning point for God's providence, which means we're meeting with Gorbachev, and the father gained submission, automatic kind of submission from the Gorbachev, who was the representative of Satan, who holds kind of eldersonship. So that's why that through the meeting, God and two parents were able to pass through the certain level of God's providence. That's the kind of providential meaning. And also, as you know, Father asked to Gorbachev to choose thousands of university students and sent to the USA. And then also actually Gorbachev government did it, and then they chose around 3,000 college students and then sent to New York. And the father had to educate them and they sent back. So that's why after Gorbachev, there was when coup d'etat happened. So these students who had been educated in the U.S., they stood up and then they protest to the military kind of revolution. And then from that moment, Soviet Union completely transformed to the Russia, which means no more communist country. That's historical. But later on, I think there is no more clear kind of practical kind of works or contact or providential things going at this moment.
Pastor Wilson, foi traduzido bem?
Sim, obrigado.
Ok.
Thank you.
Ok, muito bom, obrigado. Próxima pessoa. Pastor Boachi. Pastor Bashi, abre o microfone.
Sim. Está aberto. Minha pergunta é a seguinte: durante o curso dos verdadeiros pais, de 1945 até 1985, eles tiveram que cumprir a parte como verdadeiros pais. Mas, paralelo a isso, tiveram que realizar muitas atividades, como as bênçãos, as turnês mundiais, fazer as organizações, criar as organizações providenciais. Desses dois aspectos, o que foi mais difícil para os verdadeiros pais? Foi eles realizar a missão como verdadeiros pais, ou eles fazerem com que nós, membros, cumpríssemos a responsabilidade como famílias abençoadas? Não sei se fui claro na pergunta.
Tá traduzido?
Não, está com problema na tradução.
1945년부터 85년까지 참부님께서 참품으로서 책임을 지셨습니다. 그 기간에 그와 동시에 많은 축복 행사를 하시고 또 세계 순회도 하시고 많은 섭리 단체를 조직하셨습니다. 그런 과정에 있어서 참부님으로서는 어느 쪽이 더 어려우셨는지 그 근거합니다. 하나는 참품으로서 책임을 지시는 거, 그런 사명을 다 하시는 거, 그리고 식구들한테 책임을 다하게 만드는 거, 이 두 가지가 어떤 것이 더 어려운 포인트였습니까?
Well, I think the true parents bless the people, and then there were so many blessed families. I think of course, the true parents are really focusing on their kind of providential achievement. But without
Hello.
getting
Can you hear me?
help
Can you hear me?
from blessed families worldwide, I think the father and the true parents were not able to achieve that kind of victory according to the providential time, I believe. So that's why, of course, true parents had really focusing on 2 points on same time, not even just one by themselves or even only for the blessed members, but 2 things together. So that's why it was really difficult for true parents. But anyway, true parents did a great victory and they overcame everything. Yeah, that's what we can make as a conclusion.
Muito obrigado. Pastor Bashi, foi respondido, né?
Please.
That was answered. So the next person.
Okay, just
So Pastor Roberto, can you open your mic? Pastor Roberto from Santa Catarina, please open your mic. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the lecture. So it was explained in the lecture that True Father, he had to follow the path to realize them to restore the 3 great ships. And each one of us, blessed families, also have to follow this path. So as blessed families and Heavenly Trouble Messiahs, how can we follow these 3 steps and follow this standard of the victory on these quarters of 721 and 40 years?
정리를 합시다. 오늘은 됐어.
Nessas 3 etapas, nesses 3 passos, caminho do mais velho.
So how can we bless families achieve victory in this trip? in these three courses.
Como cada família
So,
tradicional, ou
how,
messiânica,
as Central Blessed families and Heavenly Tribal Messiahs,
alcançar e atingir
in order for us to achieve
esses três estágios
completely these three stages
mais velho,
of the three great ships,
seguir na providência do
from
missionário provincial de São Paulo.
following the providence of
참포님께서 찬작 kompoki, 부모 kompoki, 왕 kompoki의 상 kompoki의 길을 가셨다고 배웠습니다. 그 길을 같이 가야 되는 저희들은 신점매를 통해서 어떻게 그 길을 가야 되고 또 참포님께서는 40년 광야 노정을 통과해서 전자 kompoki, 부모 kompoki, 왕 kompoki를 가신 그 길을 구체적으로 저희들이 신점매를 통해서 거듭가야 된다고 생각하는데 그런 그 상권폭기 하는 길을 좀 더 구체적으로 알고 싶습니다.
Okay, thank you for your question. I know your heart. You want to go quickly, right? Yeah. So basically, for this seminar for 7 days, my main focus is that all members in Brazil and South America really get to know where I am standing. In other words, what was our past and what's going on in the present time and where we supposed to go. This is the basically 7 days kind of contents and the course of seminar. So that's why it's not the end. I'm not going to leave after 7 days. That's just the first step. So I'm preparing second step and third step. So that's why I know what are the points that you feel thirsty. So I am preparing it, and I will take that one by one as a subject, and I will explain. The most important point is that how to do it at this moment, right? So let me share in the very close near future with you. Thank you.
Muito obrigado.
So thank you very much.
Nossa aprendizagem tem bastante coisas.
Let's keep going with our learning. There much more to come.
거의 다 끝난 것 같습니다.
Okay, thank you so much, brothers and sisters in South America. So we just finished just one lecture. So I don't know how much you understood, and then you just get it and then digest. I'm not sure, but I try to share with you what I have known and what I have watched and what I have felt in my public life so far. So that's why still we remain 6 lectures. So please join and enjoy next lectures. See you tomorrow. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much.
Vamos a encontrar mañana mais uma vez.
So let's meet again tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.
Night for the Philippines.
Good night from the Philippines.
Boa noite, boa noite.
Boa noite a todos, um abraço.
Boa noite.
Obrigada. Da Philippines.
Noite a todos.
Boa noite.
Gracias, buenas noches, bendiciones. Estuvo muy bien la ponencia de nuestro hermano.
Gracias.
Um abraço, a minha família, bom dia a todos.
Boa noite a todos e todas.
Hermanos y hermanas.
Para Mario.
Boa noite, Sônia. Boa noite, Vitória.
Boa noite, Brasil.
Saludos desde Brasil a todos.
Tia Alessio, boa noite, Genilda.
Boa noite, Brasil. Boa noite, Boa noite, Marlon.
Senhora Geni.
Boa noite.
Boa noite, Zé